Alright guys, it's Muhammad aka RZ, and I got my brother here.
Timur.
And we're back with, this time, the longer impressions video. So obviously we didn't want to make the last video too long for just people who may have followed but just don't have time for it. I mean, honestly, this is something you can probably keep on in the background while we talk for a bit, just about our experiences with developing the game of Life's a Drag in general. And we just want to give a more in-depth look, because I know, like, for me, a lot of the videos I watched out there with like indie developers and programming tutorials, all that stuff, like for stuff in the past that people have done, it's really inspirational. And I know that a lot of them don't really like do the post after the game's launched, and you know, they'll say like after they become successful, but they won't necessarily post like once the game's completed a little impressions video of what they went through. So I guess what we'll do is we'll talk about some specifics that we liked, that we didn't like, and once more maybe we'll give some tips to future game devs out there that are looking to potentially do what we're doing. And again, we're not professionals, so let's just get that out there right away. I honestly probably programmed that thing horribly. You can see on the GitHub page that I have for it how the code looks. It's pretty much spaghetti code, and I don't like spaghetti in the first place. And I mean, I'm sure for you, like, you personally felt you could do better, even though I think your artwork was pretty good. I'm sure that there's always like improvement you feel you can do. But I guess, yeah, you can start it off. So let's get the bad out of the way first. What was something that during this process, doesn't necessarily have to be with the artwork, just in general, what was the most challenging, or the part that you felt like you were like, man, this is getting me down, like it's demotivating you? I don't know if that's a word, but like making you go down and not wanting to potentially continue or something like that.
I mean, I would say just like the sheer amount of assets you have to make. Like, there's definitely a lot there. Like when I started the first few levels, it wasn't bad. But you're kind of doing like the same thing over and over again with making like new assets. So that gets like very monotonous. And just doing it over and over, it kind of like demoralizes you. You kind of want to do something else. So I would have to like go and like work on the UI at some points to just kind of like get a fresh take. And also, I guess, just like trying to figure out how Unity works at some points. Like for the most part, it wasn't that bad. But like there would be some points where like I wouldn't really know what was going wrong, or like I try to put something in and it wasn't working properly. But I kind of figured that out on my own. But that kind of got a little bit frustrating too.
When it comes to that stuff, like you did a lot of like creative stuff too, like a lot of Easter eggs in the backgrounds and stuff that, you know, be sure to look at those when you're playing the game, and you can find some stuff that are, number one, throwbacks to other games we like, and just in general stuff that we might have as inside jokes that maybe not everyone will get. But was that something that like you felt you had to do it, or was it just something that you were like, yeah, I'm just gonna throw this in because I think it's fun? Or did that kind of feed into what you were saying? Like you were like, I need to do something different to get my mind off of the same thing over and over.
Well, most of those Easter eggs and stuff, you'll notice the more like in the beginning levels, like you probably won't find much in like the harder levels. So I guess it's kind of true in that like I did feel at the beginning I kind of needed to do that, but like as time went on, I kind of felt like it kind of became too much. Like it kind of became like an extra layer that I didn't have to worry about on. But yeah, I guess that's part of it, you could say.
Well, when it comes to my end of things, the programming side, and well, not even just that, advertising, marketing, social media, pretty much, I mean, I'm not saying that you weren't helping with that, because you were, but I was pretty much the forefront of it, you know, creating emails, creating passwords for like other different things that we're using, talking to people who play the demo, all that stuff. It does become overwhelming, and as an indie developer, you have to kind of choose, do you want to put that extra money, time, and effort into getting all that? Because we did, and now we're at about 400 something downloads. I think it paid off really well, but that being said, a lot of it took away from the time that I had to program and to bug fix and to go through it and make things as smooth as I want. I know you said some of the people who played it that you know still say that they don't feel the control is quite there yet, that there's some areas that what did you say specifically?
Mostly it's just stuff that you drag. Like sometimes it was a bit unresponsive. I guess because like the items themselves are kind of small on the screen, so you kind of have to like make the hitbox a bit bigger to compensate. But some items were still a bit too small.
Yeah, and doing that, I had to compensate for like different. To get into the nitty gritty of it, essentially, it's like you're having to decide: do I recode this entire thing, or do I try to come up with a workaround that may not be the full like solution, but at the same time, I don't want to say gets the job done, because I don't want to sound like we're not putting our heart and soul into this. We are, but sacrifices do have to be made at certain points to ensure that like everything gets done on time. And that's something that I'm realizing. You come into it and you're like, oh, I want to do this. I want to make sure that this looks super awesome. It's gonna look super shiny. We're gonna have crazy effects. We're gonna have like graphics going all flying across the screen. And then you get into it like 3 months later, and you're like, wow, I'm way behind. Like, I'm just getting the basic functionality, much less getting these crazy graphics that we wanted. So that's one thing I will say, is getting that mindset of we have to get this done before we polish it is important when it comes to games. It's not like a video where once you've shot all the video, you can do some post-editing magic and make stuff look amazing. I'm not saying that always works either for videos, but for game development, we could have put in a bunch of effects to mask like some of the glitches, but guess what? There would have been more glitches because I wouldn't have had time to go in and fix the stuff that was buggy before. So people would have said, hey, this game looks nice, but it's really ultimately not. The control isn't there. It's not a good game to play. It's good to look at, not good to play. So, if you're going for style over substance, then more power to you. But for me, I love to get the functionality. Maybe that's just me as a programmer. Personally, I already told Tamor here, he's doing the UI for the next game. He's got to learn about Unity, because that I am not artistic in the slightest, and there are things in there that I didn't even know, because at first I was just like scaling the items without like keeping the aspect ratio correct. So some of the earlier levels, you'll probably notice it, because I don't know if you went back and changed it at all, but I didn't go back and like mess with the scaling at all. So I think some of them are just like the X, it's gonna look kind of squashed, or it's gonna look kind of like that, because I just kind of drag the corners without knowing that you can hold shift and keep the aspect ratio like you could in what you taught me in Illustrator was a thing. And I'm just like, oh, so that's how you make it like not look very stretched and distorted. So some of the earlier levels, you probably can notice that if you really look into it. But yeah, that was one of the things. It wasn't even like programming wise, but the programming of the UI was really pretty straightforward. But some of the stuff like sliding this stuff, you'll notice on higher resolution devices, the buttons to slide don't actually go all the way over, and that was just something that I personally could not figure out, and that's part of the UI system that I'm just like, to get more technical with it, the transforms for UI versus the transforms for game objects are different, and that's because of the way Unity handles its canvas system and a bunch of other stuff that it's just so much to explain. If you want to talk more about that, be sure to like email us or send us a message on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll be more than happy to talk about that with you guys, like one-on-one maybe. But yeah, just in general, I did not like the UI system in Unity. They are overhauling it soon, which is nice, and I heard it's going to be very straightforward, though I don't know if it'll be in time for whatever our next project is going to be. But yeah, definitely I think that you will be much better at handling the UI, like anchor points and scaling stuff, and just in general figuring out how to put stuff on the screen to make it look good on mobile devices. And that's another thing I should just bring up real quick. Mobile devices, there's a lot of them out there. And like our phones, well, my phone specifically, it's a 4-year-old phone. It's a LG V20, I believe. And it's that old, I just can't remember the name. But my phone is a 16:9, and I figured like most phones are getting taller. But now I realize all phones are becoming folded. They have the 5:9, whatever the aspect ratio is. And dude, programming the thing to make it work for all those different aspect ratios is not fun. I can see why PC ports get a lot of flack because they don't work on release, but there's just so many resolutions you have to think about, not only for mobile but for PC in that regard. So it's not fun, but when it works, it looks pretty nice. Our first release of the demo, I got a bunch of people emailing me, texting me, and even like your friend was like saying half the screen's cut off, and I didn't even think about that. So that's one thing I will say. I guess that's a tip I can say is test your game out. Have people that you don't know, have devices that you're not comfortable with if you're developing for mobile or PC. Test the game out and make sure it runs well on different devices, not just what you have. I know it's not cheap. We're not a company that can just order a bunch of phones and test out stuff. So, we have what we're limited to. So I just said, hey, I just told some people that I knew. I said, we have a demo we want you to try out, and it's free. So try it out and see what happens. And we got a lot of good feedback from it. I think. Do you remember any specific feedback that you took into account from the demo that you handled? I guess that's another tangent we can go off of.
I guess it was both of us technically, but like I would say the times were like really short. So that's something we had to change. I think anyone who played the demo watching this knows like it was really hard to get 3 stars unless like you were just really good and you knew where everything was. So yeah, we kind of had to go back and like tweak the times for that. So that's one thing.
Did you feel like when you played it originally, you were looking at it from a developer's point of view, and then when you played it as a playtester, you were looking at it from a like general player's point of view that just downloaded a game from the App Store?
Yes and no, because when I first played it, it was sort of in like this, I guess like debug kind of state. Like I said before, with like the UI that wasn't really polished or anything. So it kind of felt like a developer release or like a tech demo. But then when there was like more there, like that I made, then it felt like more of like a polished game. In a way, it felt like I was playing it from someone else's perspective, but I think you'll always have that kind of mentality of the game developer playing it. Like that's not something I could really escape. Working on the assets for so long and like just playing it so many times, it's not really something I could escape.
We've been talking a lot about the bad, so let's get into the good. What is something, I guess I'll go first on this, something that you really enjoyed about this experience? Could be game development, could be your specific tasks within it. Just something that you really, really liked and you would do again, and you want to talk about, tell people about, like anyone that's discouraged, you'd be like, look forward to this. For me, it would have to be seeing the progress. So I know that's really vague, but seeing where it was when we began on these basic test levels that were super, super generic, and then seeing it progress, seeing different items come into play, seeing different mechanics come into play, starting to mess around with them, the menu system, as small as it is, seeing all that grow, that is the best experience of it. It's like if for any of you that are content creators out there, it's like when you film the video, you see the raw footage, and then you're editing, and then you keep clicking that play button. You're like, oh, let me go watch what I edited so far. You see that, I guess, growth in it, and it really just adds a layer of, I guess, I don't even know what the word would be. Not just happiness, but just really an awesome feeling in your head. You're just like, wow, I'm doing this. We are doing this. We're bringing this together and bringing it to life. And specifically for programming, if you want me to get something for that, it would have to be whenever I create a new script in the Unity engine, I see that blank canvas and then it finally gets filled. Specifically, there's one script that has over 2,000, almost 3,000 lines of code in it. Now, a lot of them are comments, and some of it is like copied code, but just with a bit of changes to it, because I couldn't put them in specific functions or whatever. But barring all that, seeing it go from that blank canvas to a full crazy list of stuff is awesome. And I actually was able to, in school before, go through like a professional game dev piece of code, which was the Quake games, Quake 4 and Quake 2 respectively. I deal with them and they had 10,000 lines of code. I don't know what I was looking at, but I'm sure those developers knew exactly what they were looking at, and they were really happy from getting it from 0 lines of code to whatever those lines of code is or was. And I'm not saying that having more lines of code means your project's better. Some of the scripts I have are only 50 lines, maybe even less, and they get a lot done in those 50 lines. But seeing it grow is awesome. And that's just the in general opinion I have about it. Seeing it go from something so small to something so big. And I know we're talking about a mobile game here, but seeing it come to fruition and be on the phone in front of me where I can just play it whenever I want is awesome. And that's something that I would say as a developer you should look forward to. Pretty much just go for it. Build your project, make it big, make it become bigger, because it's really something to look forward to, I would say. It's something that you shouldn't be discouraged about, saying, oh, this looks very small right now, I don't know if it's going to become anything big. Keep working at it. Eventually you'll get there, and then you'll look down from the top and be like, wow, I did all of this below me. So, I know it's a little motivational there, but that's just my outlook on it. What about you? What was something that was super, that you just want to tell people about?
So I'm going to be a little more specific and zero in on something. I talk about the animations that I did. So I did all the sprite sheets for the game. So all the animations that play, that was made by me. So the way I did it was in Adobe Illustrator. And the thing with that is, at least as far as I know, you can't actually play the animation frame by frame. So when I did it, I don't actually see the animation until it's in Unity itself. So I kind of just, I guess I'll say I kind of just wing it at first, and then when it's in Unity, I just see how it looks, and if it's off a little bit, maybe I'll just tweak 1 frame or 2 frames. And I'll say I do see why a lot of indie games use pixel art, because usually that's not done in a program like Illustrator. It's done in Sprite or Photoshop. And I believe those programs have a built-in animation player, so you can see how it looks. And with pixel art, it's a lot easier to position. If it's off by 1 pixel, it's very obvious and very easy to fix. With Illustrator, the way I'm doing it, it's a little harder, because with the way it's designed, it's it kind of has it's hard to notice, but it's the edges are kind of blurry, so it's a little hard to line up. But yeah, there's that. But actually seeing it in Unity and actually working and actually implementing it, using the code that you made, to where when you swipe it, it'll play the animation, incorporating that, it's just really satisfying to see everything just work in motion, because when you make it, it's sort of just a bunch of still images, but once you actually put it in the game and it's functioning, you kind of see it come to life. So that's something I really enjoyed.
It's really interesting to see how other people play your game, because the intent with that was that you're supposed to drag on the item to get stuff to work. I say, I don't know if this is the same with your friends, but when I had my friends play it, all I see them doing is tapping around the screen until something happens. And yes, the code is meant to be swiped, but if you're, to be specific about it, if the position of your finger from where you last had it on the screen is different than where you have it after that on the screen, as long as they're both within the hitbox of the item, it will actually trigger the animation. So some people will just do stuff and then it happens. And that's just an example, but I just wanted to say, seeing the reactions and the actions, it's themselves, of players and how they play the game differently than you intended it to be played, but having these awesome reactions is pretty cool. Well, is there anything else that comes off the top of your head that you think is really cool, that you would want to tell people to motivate them when making a game?
Think about the style you're going for, because mine is more modern or flat design, but you might want to do something that's more pixel art based, which I say would probably be like better. I think maybe for like future projects we might consider that. Because I think that's easier to work with. There's no like blurry edges or anything, so you don't have to worry about stuff looking shaky. But I mean, for the style I went for, which was more flat, I definitely used a program like Adobe Illustrator, which is more like vector based. So you, like when you export it, it's going to be blurry no matter what. But when you're making the actual assets, it's not going to be blurry in the program. So I would say like definitely be mindful of that stuff.
Well, that's another thing I was going to ask. We got some assets actually outsourced from people. When working with that, did you feel it was pretty easy, or did you feel like you had to kind of mess with their work to make it look in line with the way you were working with it?
No, it was actually really easy, and that's, I think, one of the good things about Adobe Illustrator. If you are going to use like assets from other people, it's actually very easy to edit like specific parts. So for example, like with the treasure chest animation, I think it was either Medium House or Hard House, that wasn't animated, but I was able to like edit specific parts of that sprite to actually make the animation work. If it was just like I don't know, like a PNG file or something, it would be much harder to work off of.
I guess in general, I just wanted to say, like, as I said before, finish your project. Whatever you have, like, break it down into smaller pieces. For instance, one of the things I had to do was the entire combination system. So what I did was I focused on, I think I did it like a day-by-day thing for an entire week. I said, all right, today I'm going to have like the boxes themselves have the colliders, just so I could test out if items could be interacted, or just so that items could actually, when they're placed in there, have some effect. So I got that done. Then the next day I was like, all right, now let me make sure that if I place 2 items in there, something happens. It'll check like, it won't actually like make a new item, but it'll just say, hey, you put 2 items in the box or something like that. I know that, you know, some people might be able to do all this in one day, and that would be like 1 task out of 10 for a day. But as an up and coming developer, make it as small as possible, as long as you know that you can get it done by whatever deadline you have is. So I gave myself a week. You know, I did bit by bit, got the items to interact with each other. Then I got 2 items in together, made sure that if you try to put another item into the same box, it would pop the second item out and say, there's something already in there. And then have both items, one item's in one box, one's in the other, check to combine, check to not combine, and then actually finally create a new item. And then it was just like, it kind of becomes like a wheel going into motion. Like, you got to give it that start, but once it gets going, then like as long as you keep working at it, you'll get it going, and then finally you'll get it like into first gear, into second gear, and then continuously moving. I don't know why I'm comparing this to like a manual car, because I can't drive stick shift. But what I'm saying is, in general, it's just getting that first step, I think, is the hardest part. And even, I would say, like the beginning, it was kind of, I was a bit worried, because I'm like, there's a lot that we have to do, and to get it done, you know, we gave ourselves a certain deadline. We were like, this isn't gonna happen. Then we gave ourselves like another deadline. We said, this isn't gonna happen. We kept doing a little more and more until we finally said, look, we gotta solidify a date. I said to myself, once we put this date out there, we're not changing it. I made that clear. I said, look, if we gotta cut content, I hate the fact that we might have to cut content in our first game. And we did. Every game has cut content. Don't let anyone tell you it didn't. Even Flappy Bird has cut content. I don't care what the guy says. Flappy Bird has cut content in it, man. There is no game out there that has 100% of what the developers intended. You will always find some type of file that's unused. Don't go data mining in our game. I'm just kidding. But if you want to data mine, go, feel free to. But there will always be content that's unused. Don't be ashamed of it, you know? Have a plan and get as close to that plan as you can to complete the game. And just make sure everything's functional. That's the main thing. So I know I'm like jumping around here, but if I had to sum it up in one sentence, let me see here. This is tough. If I had to sum it up in one sentence, the overall impressions of this, it would be very fun, but also very stressful. And even with that being said, would do it all over again. I don't know if that's considered one sentence, but that would be my one sentence to describe the entire process of making Life's a Drag. How about you? If you could sum up everything in one sentence, what would you say? Like everything from start to finish to where we're at right now.
Very daunting, but very rewarding. Because there's a lot of stuff that's kind of scary to think about. Like you said, like obviously we're gonna have content and stuff like that. But I think it's still seeing what made it in the game. It's still very rewarding to see like what we accomplished throughout this whole time. So that's what I would say. Very daunting, but very rewarding.
I think we should wrap this up. But again, if you want to know specifics for us, you can contact us at ourname.bukugames@gmail.com. So Mohammed, mohamed.bukugames@gmail.com, and Timur, timur.bukugames@gmail.com. Or you can also message the Bukugames Facebook page, or just in general leave a comment here. And if you want us to go into more specifics, like again, play the game. If you have anything that you want to ask us, like how we did this, or even looking back at the devlogs, like how'd you go from this to this? I'm more than willing to answer. I don't know. Are you the same way? Yeah. So we're both willing to answer any questions and just in general help out anyone else, because a lot of you guys out there, the indie developers out there, helped us out too. So seeing your videos really motivated me specifically, and I'm glad I didn't fall into a lot of the traps that you guys said not to fall into, and we got the game completed. But with that being said, I wanted to just make sure that we let you guys all know Life's a Drag is only the beginning. It is only the beginning. I cannot say much more about what's going to happen next, but just know it has to do with these shirts, something similar to them. There's going to be something in store for 2021. Let's just say that. And 2020 being as crazy a year as it was, I think it's crazy. I think there was no better time for us to try to make a game, because that's the craziest thing that could happen. Is I literally programmed a video game. You did the artwork for a video game in 2020, which was a crazy year already. So with that being said, I'm glad you guys all enjoyed this. Well, I hope you guys all enjoyed this, I guess, finale of Life's a Drag, but not the finale of Bukugames. We're going to have plenty more videos on here. Maybe we'll even play the game for you guys in the future, just to give a little, like, thing or whatnot. I don't know. But any last closing thoughts you had, or just closing things you want to say before we get out of here?
I mean, just to, like, recap everything. Like I said before, like, if you have something that you want to do, I would say go for it. Even if it's not, even if you don't get the outcome that you're looking for, you still get something out of it. So definitely worth doing.
All right. And with that being said, I think we have reached the end of Life's a Drag's journey. Well, not necessarily, because we're still putting out updates for the game and stuff. So if you find any glitches or stuff, of course the game's going to be updated. But in its current state, we probably won't be doing any more devlogs or anything like that. But stay tuned right here on the YouTube channel, over on our social media, specifically Facebook and Instagram, and I mean maybe our Twitter as well, for more info on Bukugames, what the future of us is going to be like. We reached 100 followers on Facebook actually, so thank you all for that. Thanks for the 400 plus downloads. We're hoping to reach 500. Please let it happen. And download Life's a Drag right now on the Google Play Store for free, 100% free. The only thing that you could potentially pay money for in the game is no ads, which the ads are not intrusive in any way. So I'm not going to continue plugging the game much more. I'm just happy that we finally accomplished that. And of course, we will, as soon as we can, give you more information on new stuff over here at Bukugames. With that being said, I've been Mohammed, aka RZ.
And I'm Timur.
And for not the final time, but definitely one of many, if it's not fun,
it's not worth it.
See you guys next time.